Welcome to the Always Better Than Yesterday interview sessions. I am your host, Ryan Hartley. This channel exists to inspire and encourage your heart-centered leadership. Each week, I share interviews with some of the greatest heart-centered leaders in the world. I hope our time spent together helps you leave a heartprint where those around you are left better than yesterday. Please visit abty.co.uk if you would like us in your corner. These interview sessions are brought to you by Matt Media Online Marketing, an independent agency who specialise in content marketing, helping business owners get their message seen by the right audience. If you want to get your business seen through the power of social media, head to mattmedia.online. On episode 218, I welcome back our great friend, Jonathan Darling, the love and leadership guy. Since we last had Jonathan on the podcast, he has written 2 books. Jonathan is a husband, father of 3, and has spent the last 2 decades in business development and sales leadership, spending the last 13 years in packaging and manufacturing. Jonathan believes in the power of loving and caring for each customer, building sincere relationships, and helping them make a massive positive impact for their teams, customers, and communities. We have an incredible conversation. We catch up on Jonathan and his life and all the things that he's done in the last 4 years since he was originally on the show. We talk a little bit about his upbringing. We talk a little bit about him being a man of faith and being called even deeper into what it means to be a follower of Jesus. It's one of the longest conversations I've had on this podcast. I absolutely love Jonathan and his heart. Jonathan has had a huge impact on my life and the way that I show up for you, the audience, and I hope that you really get to hear the heart and mind behind Jonathan Darling. It's an incredible conversation, one which I would love to hear your feedback. Please do share it to your stories and email us podcast@abty.co.uk with any questions or comments you have about the show. But here we go, episode 218 with Jonathan Darling. Jonathan Darling, welcome back to the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast. How are you, brother?
Oh, man, it's awesome to be back.
Episode 22.
Episode 22 was the first time I was on?
Episode 22. Let me just see when that was. That was back in November 2018.
5 years.
Yeah, man.
5 years. And that was before we were friends.
Yeah, that was when someone was like, hey, there's this guy, he's like, talks about love and leadership and heart, I think you guys should connect. And that was obviously the first time we spoke. We've become great friends since, and I'm looking forward to playing out this conversation. Obviously you and I did a 4 or 5 part special a couple of years back. That's 3 years ago now. That was like pandemic days.
Mm-hmm.
I think the dangerous thing is that just before we came on there, you were like, bro, we need like more than an hour.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, dude, there's the conversations that you and I were having back then. I think they weren't surface level conversations, but I think the conversations have gone way more. It's what we know and what we believe, I think, is deeper than what it was back then. I think these last 5 years, we have grown so much in a better understanding of what we were believing was the right way back then. And I think there's so much now, like, because you and I have tons of conversations on all types of different things, but I think if, like, in this type of setting now, I think it's deeper because we've grown so much more in a better and deeper understanding of why we have believed what we've believed for so many years.
Yeah, and let's bring the many new listeners up to speed with who Jonathan Darling is. And you know, I guess there's a huge backstory to how you are now the love and leadership guy, talking about love and leadership and heart-centered, and leading with love, and writing your first book. But like, have you always believed in this idea that you were destined for greatness? Have you always believed there was greatness within? Tell us about that kid.
Man, why you gotta dig deep there? Like, even just answering that, no, like, brings up a lot of emotion, and not negative emotion anymore, just like man, I can't believe where I am today. No, man, I looked back on it. I didn't have a horrible childhood. I had a challenging childhood. I know my parents loved me, and my parents were struggling through a lot of things back then. And it really wasn't until here recently too that like I really moved my forgiveness from my head to my heart when it comes to my parents. And so even in the last 3 or 4 months, my view on my childhood has changed, and it doesn't hold as much hurt. It doesn't hold any hurt for me anymore, actually. Because God took that, like he does when you give it to him. It's amazing. But growing up, man, life was challenging, and my parents got divorced when I was 10, and we moved away from home to another state, and was a good 6.5, 7 hours away from my dad. And my mom was in a really challenging spot in her life with her identity and how she felt loved and how she viewed love, and suffered from a lot of depression, didn't get out of bed for numerous years. And at 12 years old, I had a job and was helping pay bills and buy groceries and do all these things, right? And because of the circumstances we were in, and not having people in my life at that point who believed in possibility, really limited my view on what was in store for my future. I mean, the fact that I turned 40 years old 3 weeks ago. The fact that I'm 40 years old and I'm still alive is like Daring, my wife, who but for everybody else, that's my wife. Her name's Daring. She asked me, she was like, "Gosh, did you ever imagine yourself like being 40?" And I was like, "No, I didn't think I'd still be alive." I had there was no vision for anything, man. Like I did not believe that I had any value, or that there was any reason why I was here. And so it's been a real journey coming into, how I live my life today, and understanding that what it is that I can or want to achieve is really up to me.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful. And I guess, the thing I've loved since the last time we spoke was like you've gone and got your MBA. What was that like?
Yeah, well, you and I had a lot of conversations around that, right? Because for a long time I struggled, and this might resonate with anybody out there. I struggled with believing that I needed a lot more credibility in who I was, or what I've done, or what I've accomplished, or my education, or any of those things, in order to be taken seriously as a leadership person, or whatever that is. And and so signing up for my MBA was one of those things where it was like, okay, at first it was about that. It was about gaining more credibility in order to do the things in life that I thought I wanted to do. And then what it ended up becoming, and through a conversation with you, I went to college. I graduated from college. I barely graduated from college. School was, never something that I cared about at all. It was just something that I did because that's what everybody else was doing. And so, I signed up to, I applied and got it. I didn't even think I'd make it into an MBA program. Like my grades in college were awful, like a 2.35 GPA, which is like a C minus average. It was awful. And so the fact that I got into my MBA program, like, was just, it was incredible. And then, you know, you and I had some conversation, and you were like, man, this is almost your ability. This is almost like you can go back and have a redo and know that you're smart and you're intelligent and that you don't need this for credibility, but it's something that you want because you want to prove to yourself that you can do it and actually graduate and get a degree. And so, man, 2 years, started in January of 2020, graduated in March of 2022, and, you know, graduated with 1 B plus. Everything else A's. I graduated with a 3.87 GPA, and was given a spot without even applying into a doctorate program, which I turned down. But it was amazing, man. Like it was a really cool experience. I learned a lot. It showed me a lot in how to study, in how to research, and then write without and giving contextual background to what I believed, and then learning how to share my opinion using data and information and research without it just being, this is what I think and this is what I feel. And so, you know, when I look at it now, almost a year and a half after, or gosh, a year after graduating, I can honestly say getting my MBA has helped me in a lot of areas, especially in understanding how to research topics and truly begin to understand a little bit deeper of why I believe what I believe, and how to communicate it in a way that is less my opinion and more just statement of fact.
Hey, my friends, thank you for being with us so far. I hope you're enjoying the interview. I just wanted to take a quick moment to let you know about our signature heartprint coaching. Our heartprint coaching is for you if you're ready to go all in on becoming a heart-centered leader, ready to go all in on doing more of what you love, ready to see what you are capable of with support, guidance, and accountability. You're ready to go on a rapid, transformational journey that will change your life and others in as little as 3 months. Are you ready to show up with courage and share your gift with the world? Ready to start making an income and more impact by doing what you love? Ready to start leaving your legacy where those around you are left better than yesterday? In our Heartprint signature coaching, in our time together, I'll help you lead from your heart set. I'll help you develop other people and your team. I'll help you bring your heart work to the world. I'll help you start leaving a legacy and capturing examples of your impact. I will help you be someone you love, to do more of what you love, and to serve people that you love. It's an amazing opportunity for someone who's ready to go all in and be a heart-centered leader. I'll throw in loads of other bonuses, including your life languages profile, access to our Master Heart and Mind membership, and even some Always Better Than Yesterday merchandise. Head to abty.co.uk/coaching to find out more, and I look forward to connecting with you very soon. That's abty.co.uk/coaching. Here we go, back to the interview.
Yeah, and I think the really interesting thing, just to reflect on that story, and hats off to you, my friend. I love it. I love the discipline that you put into doing it. And is like, well, what was Jonathan's potential? Was his potential a 2.3, or was his potential an MBA? Because that potential has always been lying dormant within, right? And this is the thing I want to hear. I want people listening to hear is that potential is always inside. And I think particularly for young men at the moment who aren't set on fire by the topics that school are providing, they don't really have the focus and dedication and commitment to do what's necessary to show what's possible.
Right.
Because they're not engaged at the heart. They're not engaged at something that is capturing their mind and their curiosity. So, even Corey's an academic. He loves learning, but at the moment, he's getting turned off school because they're not stretching him. And that's true for so many young people right now, is that there's so much hidden potential, and yet we don't really tap into it until, I guess, later in life, when you really found out that love and leadership was your thing. I guess when did that become a thing for you? When did this emergence of love and leadership, was leadership first and then love? Or because I didn't get to know that part of you. I kind of met you at this level of heart-centered leader, Jonathan. So I've only ever known you as that guy. Like, was there a time when this has emerged from you?
Yeah. So I want, before I talk about that, it's real. I love how things happen, and we can easily say it's coincidence, or we can just say that that God's going, hey, this, like, because just this morning you were talking about school and grades and this potential and all this stuff, and one of the things that I say as a coach, I coach American football, and now coaching 12U girls fast pitch softball, and love it. Here's what we were all created for greatness. Every single, I give it to all my players. I need to send you one, but I had a bunch of keys made, and you can't see it, but on the key, it's engraved with greatness. We carry the key to greatness with us every single day. Whether we choose to use that key to unlock that greatness is really up to us. And I think what happens, Ryan, is we often rise to the level of expectation that either we have for ourselves or we have for others. So potential, to me, is unlimited in who we are. What limits our potential is our unbelief that our potential is unlimited. And it breaks my heart for that, man, because we live in a world where we teach practicality and reality and not possibility. Ooh. And I see it in school every day. This morning, literally, my oldest daughter, Bryn, she's 11. We were just talking about her off screen. She's so incredibly brilliant and smart. If she wants to be president one day, she will be. Like, she has everything she needs to be one of the most successful people I've ever seen in my entire life. Mm-hmm. She looked at her grades this morning. She has 2 Bs. Mm-hmm. Now, Bs that are like barely Bs. And she was in tears this morning. Because to her, a B is failing. Like a B is failure. And I had to tell her, I'm like, babe, like, these are incredible. Like, these are awesome. These are not something to be upset about. But because of like how she is in school and all these things, it is like anything less than an A is automatically assumed to be less than. And it's a fear of failing, not a driven towards being the most successful. And I think that's been ingrained with her, because I don't think we actually teach our kids in school anymore how to be creative. I don't think that in school, and I'm not saying this is not a bash on teachers, because I believe there are so many teachers out there doing the best that they can with what they're allowed to do. But I think, I look at my youngest daughter, she's one of the most creative people I've ever met in my life. She has no outlet for creativity in school.
Great.
And right now we're going through this thing with school where we're being told that she started kindergarten during COVID, August of 2020, she started kindergarten. So she started kindergarten virtual. And then most of the time, if she did make it into school, she was wearing masks. So from language development, being able to see the mouth move and all of this stuff is huge. So a lot of her classmates and her in her class, they're a little bit behind on their reading. Well, the school's saying, if she doesn't get a certain grade on this standardized test and she is considered below average, which don't even get me started on, that's how we're labeling our children.
Yeah.
By the way, but that then she would have to stay in mandatory summer school to get her up to par. And if us as parents choose not to send her to summer school, she gets held back in second grade.
Hey friends, I just wanted to take a quick moment to introduce the new official sponsor of the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast, Matt Media Online Marketing. Matt Media have been involved in the production of over 100 interview sessions. I highly recommend their services. Matt Media Online Marketing are an independent agency who specialize in content marketing, helping business owners get their message seen by the right audience. If you want your business seen through the power of social media, head to mattmedia.online. You can find the link in the show notes. And here we go. Back to the interview.
Oh man, what is it? What is the world coming to? And this is kind of Lisa and I talk about some of these things, and we value the school and the people,
Of course,
but the system that is effectively a sausage factory. Actually, I need to get my terminology clear because a sausage in America is different, right?
yes, it's a hot dog factory in America.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool, sweet. Yeah, what are those?
Yeah,
i.e., they're all going to come out the same, right? And that's such a disservice to the gifts and the skills and the talents of all of us. And I think you'll know Sean Brown, and Sean was talking in last year or a couple of years back now how there are multiple forms of intelligence, creative intelligence, heart intelligence, intuition, and yet the school system seems to be set up for intellect intelligence, mind intelligence, learning and memorizing, and such a disservice, man. And good people like yourself, myself, maybe particularly my wife, who's more creative than academic, all of those skills get left to be doubted.
Yes. Yeah. And like, I just look at it and I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, if she was up for it, I'd homeschool my kids. I really would. But I love school. I love the community. I love that they get to be with their friends and all of those things. But, like, my daughter is not below average, period. And she is, she works so hard at her reading. She loves to read. She carries books with her everywhere, but yet she's told she's not a good reader. And I've made sure her teachers know, like, you don't talk about her test scores of being below average or anything like that in front of her, because we don't use the terms if Blakely is below average, period. And if I hear you use them in front of her, you will be corrected, because that's not how we speak over my daughter. That's not what we say, because that test has no freaking clue what is possible for my daughter. Right. And so it's just interesting how, that conversation with Corey, and just learning how to give great effort in something, even when you don't want to do it, comes down to learning how to have the attitude to where our attitudes aren't dictated by our circumstances anymore. We choose our attitude. We choose how we show up, which determines the effort that we put in to the things that we're asked to do, whether we want to do them or not. And so we talk a lot about that our attitude and our effort is what matters, and how we show up is what matters, regardless of what's going on around us. How we carry ourselves, regardless of what matters. That's to me if that's what I can impart on my children, that they get to decide their attitude regardless of the situation that they're in, and that they can be the, John Gordon and David West talking about the coffee bean, if they can be the coffee bean, knowing that, because what the Bible says is that we are peacemakers, we create the atmosphere that we walk into. And there's a power in that. And I want my kids to understand the power in their presence and who goes with them, and how that changes the dynamic of the room just because they're there. And so, yeah, it's just really interesting. And, this is bringing it back to your actual question. This is the evolution that has been happening since 2014, 2015 in understanding what it means to be a leader. I had some, and I've reconciled with them. I've forgiven them. I had some really poor leaders in my life, especially early in my professional career. And, I just felt like everybody wanted me to be who they wanted me to be. And anytime I stepped out of that mold, I felt very demonized for it. And just felt like I was being told that this is who I was going to be for the rest of my life, and striving for anything else just didn't make sense. And as I started learning and growing as an adult, and this was around like 2013, 2014, 2015, I started doing I started reading more. I started being more confident as I was more successful in business. I started being more confident in, like, oh, wait a second, like, maybe I don't suck at everything. Maybe I do have some gifts, talents, and skills that can allow me to be successful in these things. And as I started wanting to explore those things, I very quickly got the label of being flaky, because I'd be like, oh, that job looks cool, I want to learn about that. Oh, that looks cool, I want to learn about. I started having this belief that when I would see things, I'd be like, oh, I think I could do that.
Yeah.
And they were things a little bit above where I currently was, right? Like they were that, it was things at that next level that I was like, oh, I think I can do that. Yeah. But no, John, you stay here. You stay.
Yeah.
And when I left that company, and some things had happened where I was being made fun of, I was just all types of negative stuff was being said, was being written about.
What's the one-liner?
Oh, about what they were saying?
Yeah. What's that one-liner?
Well, one was written on a blog that I'd written, and the president of the company that I'd previously been working for made up a fake email address, and several of them made up fake email addresses. And they said, shut your fat ass up. You know nothing about leadership. Go back to work. You're not a leader. You've never been a leader. Why are you writing about leadership? You know nothing about it. All types of stuff like that. And honestly, man, that was really the moment where I was like, these are men. These were men that I looked up to, as if like I wanted to emulate their lives. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be in positions like them. I wanted to have the title, the stature, the finances, all of these things that they had. I wanted to be where they were. And what I really quickly learned was that if that's what it was like being them, I wanted no part of it, because I didn't understand how people that I looked up to, that I truly loved and believed cared about me, actually didn't. And so the leadership thing came first. because I wanted to be a leader. I wanted to be like them. So I started reading, but I was always asking them taking people to lunches, always asking the C-suite level executives and the high level executives to go out to lunch with me. And what are they reading? I was reading all the books that they were reading. I was studying the things that they said I should study. I had subscriptions to the magazines and the Wall Street Journal, like they said that I would. I gave them my heart to do with it what they will. And they didn't care about having my heart. They just wanted my production.
Mm-hmm.
And so the leadership thing had started, and it was after that when at that point they broke my heart. It was incredibly hurtful. And I just said, this can't be what leadership is. This can't be it, because it doesn't feel right. And so I started doing way more research into what leadership is, and more of the books that I started reading, more of the videos that I started watching of like high performing coaches in high level sports, and the language that they would use and all these things. There was a common theme that would always come around, and that you would always hear him be like, oh man, like I love my people. I love my team. We love each other, all this stuff. And then the more I started digging into my Bible and getting closer with God, I really started seeing like, oh, wait a second. No, like love is leadership, and leadership is love. And it just became this thing that I just knew that if I wanted to be a great leader, I needed to be a great lover.
And I know where this is going to go next, because the journey that you and I have both gone on is that we've attained some form of success in the material world, which has only then revealed the need for us to do what? Become that in our homes first. Talk to me about Jonathan, the family guy. Talk to me about, because one of the things I wanted to pick up on a minute ago was I love the fact that you're not outsourcing your fatherhood. I love the fact that you're not outsourcing it to the school, being very purposeful, very intentional with how you lead and the values with which you talk about. Is that a process? That been a journey too?
It's been a huge process.
Yeah.
I've not been a horrible father.
Mm-hmm.
I've not been a great one.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a, oh no, John, you're a great dad. Like, no, I've sucked.
Mm-hmm.
And I've sucked because my understanding of what my role as a father was drastically skewed by the example, and my dad and I were talking about this, but by the example of my own father. Because my dad is a great dad. I love my dad with all my heart. The example that he set when I was a youth was that if you love your family, you are going to work extremely hard, and you might not be around a lot. Because even when my parents were married, my dad wasn't around a lot. He worked a ton, and he was always giving of himself to other people. And it was several years ago. It was July of 2020, right before I went to this weekend that we now call Warrior 1-3 Freedom Weekend. Back then, we didn't call it anything. It wasn't even a thing at that point. And 2 weeks before, I got a phone call from Casey Chapman inviting me to this weekend. I'm in an argument with my wife, and she says, John, you talk about love and leadership, but you don't even love and lead your own family. And she was right. She was right. And 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from Casey inviting me to this weekend. I go to this weekend in Phoenix, Arizona. I fly to California, go with him, meet all of these incredible men, meet a guy who's become a father figure in my life and one of my closest friends, Pastor Tommy Hunter. And I remember leaving that weekend and calling my wife while sitting at the airport. And I told Daring, I said, "Hey, babe, I just want you to be ready because I'm coming home a new man. Like, just be ready." And even since then, man, there's been this arc, this story arc of learning how to be a better father, and going through these things, and then we had just taken custody of now our son Alex, and all that stuff during that time. And even today, one of my biggest challenges right now in my life is, I still have a day job, and they pay me incredibly well to do what I do. But I'm back in a situation where some leadership doesn't necessarily like how I do what I do. Mm-hmm. And I travel a ton, and they're kind of forcing me into an international role where I will travel even more. And I've been traveling for almost 10 years, a lot, and I'm done. I don't want to travel anymore. I want to be home with my kids, like coaching my children, being home with my children, being with my family. If I want to travel, I want to travel with my family now. And so, I'm a partner, and I have started a business, and I have written on my board right here. The company doesn't know this, but I have written on my board right there, January 14th, 2023, I'm retiring from my day job. I believe I know how that's going to happen. I have no clue, but I believe by that date, I'm going to be turning in my retirement papers to my day job, and burning the boats. Like I'm burning the freaking ships, dude. That is when I'm leaving, because I want to coach my kids. I want to be with my kids. I want to be around my family. I am realizing now that chasing the corporate status that I was doing for a long time pales in comparison to my role as a father, and as a husband, as a husband first, as a father second. And it's a different shift for me, man, because I think for a long time I was playing with the idea of the entrepreneurial life and doing things my own, and working for myself and writing and doing all those things. I think there was a lot of playing with it, knowing that, still wanting this piece of me to be the guy that travels all over the world and is the high level executive, and, almost to prove to people that I could be that. I don't want any part of it. I don't want any part of it anymore. I want to be the coach. I want to be the dad. My relationship with my daughter, since I've been coaching her, I've never had her tell me how much she loves me as much as what she has over the last 3 months. My relationship with my son, Alex, after coaching him the last 2 years, 3 years in football, our relationship is different. And man, like I've had to learn, man, and what I've really learned too, even over the last few months, is that if I want to be a great father, I have to be a great son. And I want to be a great son. And I now look at my father figure differently, because most of my example in how to be a great father is not coming from my earthly father anymore. He is a great dad. My example does not come from him anymore. my example of how to be a good father comes from my father. And I'm learning how to rest in being a good, in being a loved son, which is helping me be a loving father.
I love that. January 14th, 2024.
23.
That's gone.
It's 2023 now.
Yeah. So you've done
July
14th,
2023.
I'm sticking that in my calendar.
And there's a lot to that, dude, because there's some stuff that happened to my business partner now called me with this thing, and we're rocking and rolling. We just picked up the largest customer that we could have ever picked up to be our first customer. But it was funny when all of this started, I just felt like January was it. And this was in December when my partner and I really started talking about this. And it was just like, man, like July. And it was funny because about 8 months previous to that, I had someone speak something over me, and I have it written down exactly what they spoke. And it said, it's going to launch fast like an explosion, quicker than you think. God is saying, son, be ready to run, because I'm going to fast forward this quick. 6 months. Like, it gives me goosebumps now saying 6 months. I didn't correlate the two at that point. Write down your short-term and long-term goals. Now throw away your short-term. God is making your long-term goals your short-term ones. God says, I have things I need you to do. So this step is only the beginning for what I have in store for you. And then it goes on, millionaires are going to come in your path with launching your company. By the end of the year, you will be a millionaire. Keep your eyes open into what the Father wants and to the directions, and watch. God says, I have ordained this, which means nothing can stop it.
Oh, all it requires is your willfulness.
So dude, I'm just walking as if it said 6 months. When we started this venture, July really like just came on my heart. And it wasn't until about 5 or 6 weeks later that like, I was like, wait a second, like July is 6 months from now. 6 months, like maybe that's what they were talking about. And then it hit me. That is what, so I'm just dude, I picked July 14th because I'm just choosing that it's going to happen.
For people that don't have a faith, because I didn't when I first met you. And that's the funny thing, right? And it's not until I became, adopted Jesus as my king that I learned something about like a council of saints, which is the people that God sends, right? It's good people in your life. And look at like in here in England, I hadn't been around that kind of men of faith. But then I look back and I was talking to people like you, Luke Frazier, Zachariah Thompson, Christine Saunders. You're all talked about God and this. I just thought that was an American thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like, but actually, like, wow, like you were just shaping a whole new level of possibility. Like in some way, like you don't have to be Ned Flanders to like follow God. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm the farthest thing from Ned Flanders as a man of faith. Yeah,
but that was a barrier for me. The perception that that's what it was, and I guess it's really hard to articulate. And maybe you can try is. What confidence does it give you to feel that unconditional love from a father? What confidence does it give you to hear the words, this is ordained?
I think this has been an interesting process for me, especially over the last probably 4 or 5 months. My faith has even shifted in the last 4 or 5 months. And because I've seen things happen because of faith. And people can think it's crazy, it's coincidence. I've been in a position where I've been able to pray for a young man, a little boy who was going back into the hospital because his cancer had come back. And he was going in to get scans to see how bad it was. and we prayed for his healing. And dude, I just felt like it was one of the first times that I prayed for something where there was no other option than his healing for me. Because I knew I know it's possible. And it was one of the first times I'd ever prayed that way before. And 3 days later, we get a phone call. The young man had gone, he's like 6 or 7. They took him into the hospital, did his scans to find how much the cancer had spread. It was gone. Completely healed. And that shifted something in me, because that was the first time that had ever happened with me before. And so I was having this conversation with Casey Chapman on Friday. The way my faith has changed for a lot of people, I think it could look like it's the size of Mount Everest. It could look really big. The difference is I don't actually think my faith is that big, but I don't think my faith is that big. I think my faith is the size of a mustard seed. I just don't doubt anymore that when I go to the Father, he's going to listen. And because in his word, he says, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, but do not doubt. Crazy. I think my faith has changed because I no longer doubt what the word says is possible with God. But not only that, like I trust him. I take him at his word. So my faith, it doesn't have to be big. To some people, it looks huge. It is only the size of a mustard seed. I just refuse to walk around doubting that what he says isn't possible anymore for today. And dude, it has allowed me to walk into situations like I walked into a meeting room in California 3 weeks ago, and I walked into this room, and before I walked in, how I even approach situations have changed. Because it used to be about, okay, I'm going to go into this room and I'm going to show these people how smart and how awesome I am, and blah, 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 blah. And now my conversation in how I enter a room is literally, I before I stepped foot in this room, I was like, God, use me in this room to be your light. You're going to put me in front of the right people that I need to be in front of so that I can love them the way that you have called me to love them. Thank you for putting me right where I need to be right now. And dude, I walked into this room and it was crazy to see, like, oh, well, that dude over there, who's this high level, like global decision maker guy at this huge factory, this huge company, is from the same town as my grandparents and has worked with my aunt for the last 14 years. And now we have stuff going with, and the other guy just happens to live down the street from me. And this other, and all of a sudden, dude, all of these things are happening.
And you were in LA.
And I was in LA.
For context, you live in Tennessee.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, man, where I literally just don't doubt that what he says is possible anymore. And it is so freeing to know that even if it doesn't work out, it's not about it working out the way that I want it. But I'm going to pray for certain things, and I'm going to pray for God to move in certain ways. But I'm okay even if he doesn't do it, because I know whatever happens is a part of his plan, and it's exactly how it should have happened. And it's still going to work out in the end the way for his good. And if it doesn't, if it doesn't benefit me, I'm okay with it.
Faith, acceptance, freedom, possibility, but ultimately peace.
Yes. Because I know in the end, dude, I win.
Yeah. I went in my early days, obviously I had a heart experience which kind of captured my mind. So I wasn't kind of like, if I hadn't had that heart experience in 2019 on Father's Day, then I intellectually would never have got to this point. I'd fortunately had a transformation. I'd kind of love to know what that was for you at this Warrior 1-3 in a minute. But for me, I'd captured by this heart experience that I knew something had happened. My mind just had to learn. It wasn't a case of be convinced. It was a case of, right, now you use your mind just to learn more about whatever this is. And I remember being at a friend's house. We just got involved in a life group, or Lisa certainly did. And I was kind of the odd one around the table, because everyone else, the couples were kind of well into it. You know, I would have called these people Bible bashers, like back in the day. I definitely felt like the odd one out, right? I was definitely the one that had difficult questions. I was, you know, a varying degree of still convince me. And I had this huge vibe around, why would I trust a heavenly father when I can't, you know, couldn't rely on my earthly one? Why would I vote for another one? You know, why would I vote for somebody else to let me down? Not only this, but I can't actually see this one. And this guy goes, look, read this book. And it was Not Forsaken by Louis Giglio, right? And I thought, cool, like, I'll take it. And I won't read it because I don't sit down long enough to read a physical book that often. But I picked it up on this one occasion, and I've just looked on Amazon. There are 256 pages in this entire book, right? And I open it on this one page, and it says Knoxville, Tennessee. And I thought, oh, that's funny. I know someone who lives in Knoxville, Tennessee. And then I put the book down. I don't pick the book up for another week. And I pick it up again. And I look at it, and I read the words this time. Somebody in Knoxville, Tennessee will see what a miracle this day will be. I thought, this is weird. Like, this cannot be a coincidence. I can see you getting a bit emotional about it, because I know the significance of this moment. And I drop you a voice note, and I guess you can hear the confusion in my voice. I'm like, Jonathan, I'm not sure what this is all about, but I've just read in this book. It says someone today in Knoxville, Tennessee will see what a miracle this day will be. Take us to that moment when you received that message from me.
So hard, man. So rewind to 2012. I think 2012, 2013, sorry. And Daring and I, Bryn was almost 2, and it was in the summer before she turned 2. And we drove down to Alabama to go and visit family. And as we were visiting family, it was in the summer, we went to one of my cousins' homes. Her and I share the same birthday. She's 17 years older than me. So she's almost like an aunt. So we go to her house and we're there, and my aunt and uncle, her parents, are there, and they have their grandson, Alex. And Alex is there swimming. Alex is exactly 6 months younger than Bryn. So Bryn was like 22 months at this point. And so Alex was 16 months old, maybe a little bit older. But we met him, and we have the picture upstairs in our living room of them being little chubby babies in floaties, sitting by a pool, eating some snacks on a towel. And we spent this entire weekend and Alex was around our family. And so that Sunday night, we're driving back from Alabama back up to Knoxville. And I just look at my wife and I said, this is going to sound really crazy, like really crazy. I think Alex is supposed to be our son one day. And she turns to me and she's in tears and she was like, I think he is too. And so I immediately make a phone call to his grandparents because so Alex's parents, his dad is now in a halfway house. His dad has been in and out of prison for since we were 13. His dad and I also have the same birthday, and his dad is a year younger than me. And his mom, drug addict, both parents drug addicts, all this stuff. And so Alex, since he was born, had lived with his aunt and uncle, and there were even at that point there was no sign of his parents getting any better. So I call my aunt and uncle, Alex's grandparents, and I was just like, hey, look, I know this might sound crazy, and I know that there's this hope that Alex's parents get it together. But if you guys ever need help, because they're in their 70s, if you guys ever need help, or we'd love to take Alex. And it was brushed off, and so fast forward to 2019. And we had seen Alex a few times at some family stuff, and parents had still never come back together. So fast forward to 2019, and 2019, Daring and I, for that year, our prayer was around whether or not we should adopt, because we have some there was some stuff, having more babies wasn't a good thing due to some medical things of how my blood is and Daring's blood is and all this stuff. And so having more kids just is not in the cards. And so we were like, okay, well, let's pray about adoption. Let's pray about adopting. Well, every time we would talk about adoption, we would go, man, really wish we could have Alex. Well, it was July of 2019, and we get this phone call. And the phone call was from another cousin and was like, hey, I heard that you would take Alex. And Gran and Papa, that's what all the grandkids call them. Gran and Papa just, they're not healthy, they're not in a good spot. And we heard you guys would be open to taking Alex. Is that true? And I said, yes, 100%. And I remember Kristen, who I was on the phone with, was like, don't you need to call Daring? And I was like, nope. Like, I already know the answer. We'll take it. And she was like, okay, well, I'm going to call Gran and Papa and have this conversation with them and see if we can get them on board with this, because they just weren't in a spot to raise a 7-year-old. And so a week and a half later, we get a phone call from Kristen, and we're like, hey, you guys should come down and have a conversation with Gran and Papa. We think this is a good idea. So Sunday morning, we get up and we begin driving to Alabama. And just praying about the conversation, believing that the door was being opened for us to bring our son home. But we weren't sure how the conversation was going to go. And so as we're driving, I get the message from you with the picture of the page in the book. And what was really incredible about it is you had no clue what was going on. You had no clue that you, in that moment, were being the voice of God in my life telling me that against all odds, and every reason why there is to say no to letting Alex, who knew us flippantly, if we would have walked in a room at that point in time, Alex would have had no clue who we were.
Mm.
He didn't when he came home from school and we're sitting in his living room.
Mm.
Not school, when he came home from a friend's house. But that note, as I was driving, I just remember telling Daring, I'm like, we're good. And it was an absolute miracle. And there had been questions of whether or not he would like come home with us, you know, and come and spend time with us. And Daring and I just immediately knew that Alex was going to come home with us that night and come spend a weekend with us, or and come spend the week with us. And he did. And May 5th, 2021, he was adopted fully, and he's my son. And it's crazy to think about, even now, just thinking about it. I have viewed Alex as my son since he got adopted. When what's funny, even sitting here thinking about it now, is even the words that I said. It wasn't that looking back on it now, I thought, man, I think Alex is supposed to be my son. I think the truth of that is he was then. He just wasn't home yet. And so that was if you can't tell, that was a moment with you and I, Ryan, that I knew that you and I were going to be connected in such a different way for the rest of our lives. Like you are one of my best friends in the world, and we've never met in physical person. And but who you have been in my life, and the words that you've spoken in my life in so many different ways outside of just that one. But I knew right then in that moment that you and I were connected in a much, much different way.
Yeah, I love that. And that kind of gives so much context as to, because even like 4 or 5 years ago version of me would look at this conversation now and go, you are batshit crazy. You've
Me
lost
too.
it. You've lost it. You've got long hair. You're talking about all this God stuff. But I can't deny that. I can't deny that incredible experience. I've just Googled. There are 108,000 cities in the United States. This book, 256 pages, that happened to reference the very city that you live in. And not only did it reference the city that you live in, it talked about a miracle was going to happen today. I can't make that stuff up. That's obscene.
Yeah, and that's when I look at things like that, man, and when you choose to believe in what's possible,
Yeah.
you stop seeing life as a coincidence.
Well, this morning I shared a quote by a guy called David Hawkins, and it literally says this. It says, "Love makes possible the miraculous without labeling it miraculous."
Yep.
How cool is that?
Yeah, man. Like, it's funny. I was literally having this conversation this weekend. Like I no longer look at things as incredible miracles. I look at them as if, like, no, like, that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, right. It's
when
it's
we
for
have
us to
faith,
accept.
that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, and that's it. You know, a lot on the thing that I think we lack in the Western tradition that's really prevalent in the Eastern philosophy and tradition is one of suffering is quite often our resistance to the way that things are. our ability to accept and to go with the flow. Not our will be done. I think there's a Western illness of making gods of ourselves, and and our will be done, and truly surrendering to that higher power, God's will. Then there's not only wisdom in that and peace in that, but there's there's a whole lot of progress within that, by the sounds of with everything that's going on. Before we touch on Apostle, I'd love to make some space for that. What was it then that captured your heart and your mind at this Warrior 1-3? How did you phone and say, Papa's coming home, he's a new man? Like, what got in?
Yeah, it started from the whole beginning. The phone call from Casey inviting me to the weekend. At that point, it was like, hey, some dudes and I are going to get together with this pastor that mentors us and a few of his mentors, and we're going to go have like a guys weekend and just like really dig into what it means to be a man of God. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm into that. I love Casey. Like, even at that point, I didn't look at Casey as like some crazy Christian. I actually looked at Casey as somebody that, like, man, I wish my faith was like his. And which the story of he and I connecting is and again, it could, Daring and Casey went to middle school and high school together in California. I met Daring when I moved to California. Then when I started running in 2016, 2017, when I met Luke Frazier, which is how I met you, then I became the director, the ambassador athlete director for Luke's nonprofit, Depression to Extinction, and was recruiting athletes, mostly like ultra runners and those types. Daring was still connected to Casey through social media and was like, oh, you should connect with my friend Casey. It looks like he runs ultra marathons and looks like he's really turned his life around and like given his life to Jesus and all this stuff. And I was like, no, I'm not interested in having a conversation with a dude you used to party with back in high school. Right. And Darren was like, oh, we were always just friends and all this stuff. And she was like, actually, Casey was kind of a jerk sometimes. She was like, but it really looks like he's really turned his life around. Well, so I end up connecting with him. We build this incredible friendship very quickly.
Yeah.
And then 2 years later in 2020, after Casey had come out and stayed at my house and all this stuff, Casey invites me to this weekend. And so I asked Daring, and she's like, yeah, if Casey's inviting you, yeah, it sounds awesome. And again, this was 2 weeks after, by the way, her telling me that I don't love and lead my own family.
Yeah.
And so I call Casey back. I'm like, hey, bro, I'm in. How much is it? What do I need to do? And he goes, God told me you were coming 2 weeks ago. I've already paid for you.
Yeah.
He goes, God told me you were going to need this weekend 2 weeks ago. And so I went ahead and paid for you. 2 weeks prior, Daring was telling me,
sort it out.
Yeah, figure this crap out, dude, because it's not cool.
Yeah.
So I remember flying to California, get there, land in San Diego, and immediately go on a run with Casey, meet Daniel and Will. Daniel, awesome dude, owns the company gratitudemovement.co and Gratitude Lenses. And Will played in the NFL, and they were different. They were different dudes. And then we go in the next morning and we get in this van with all of these other dudes who are super cool guys and Tommy. Well, it just so happened the only seat available was, the only seat available was shotgun, and Tommy was driving the van.
Yeah.
Tommy's Instagram handle is the love pastor. He's the love preacher. I was the love and leadership guy. And here we are sitting side by side. And if you look at a picture of Tommy, he could be my father.
Yeah.
Bald, beard, tattoos, big.
Older brother. Let's be kind. Let's say older
brother.
Yeah. I got you.
And we just connected and we were talking and the whole time I was going, man, these dudes are different than any other Christian men that I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah.
Because most of the Christian men that I had met, if I'm entirely honest, I didn't want to be anything like them.
Right.
Because a lot of them were weak. A lot of them are they're not men. I'm just gonna say it. They're not men. And I'm not saying that to put other Christian men down, but like there's a whole different way that we're called to walk. And a lot of men don't walk it. And these guys were just walking different in their faith. And I was like, what in the world? Like these dudes are different. We literally drive from San Diego, California to Phoenix, Arizona, and we're going to stay in this Airbnb. When we get to Phoenix, and this is in the middle of COVID, this is August of 2020. We get to Arizona, go into a Chipotle, and we're in there, and Will's got his camera because he does a lot of content stuff, and you've got all of these dudes there. And Will, if you meet Will has become one of my closest friends. If you meet Will and you look at him, he just walks into a room and the room immediately lights up. Like all attention is drawn to Will, and not because he is an attention seeker. It is because the dude radiates energy and love and positivity and passion. And he's a dude who is gasoline to other people's fire pretty much all the time. And being an athlete, and, you know, now he's a model and all this stuff. Like he just walks with this different confidence than I had seen. And dudes are attracted to that. Right. And so this guy is walking through, notices Will's camera, and Will and him start rapping. Well, come to find out, this dude is the world champion slam dunk guy. Yeah, Kenny Dobbs. Look him up. Kenny's awesome. He's there with his wife and his daughter. He's got a knee brace on. All of a sudden, we're talking. Tommy's talking to him. He's sharing about how, like, you know, he is having all these issues with his knee and all this stuff, and it blah blah blah. And all Tommy says, Tommy just goes, men. And like that, every single dude except for me it gives me goosebumps. In the middle of Chipotle in Phoenix, Arizona, to a stranger, have their hands laid on him and are praying healing over him in the middle of Chipotle. His wife and daughter get up and lay hands on him also. Dudes are praying in tongues. And I'm sitting there going, what in the world? Like, who are these people? I would never do that.
Yeah.
So that happens. And I'm like, this is different.
Yeah.
We go to this, we get to the place, and hearing the transformational stories of the men that they used to be and the men that they are now, having a group of men get incredibly vulnerable, which is not easy for men to do in that atmosphere, talking about things. And I remember sitting there listening to some of these people's stories and going, why don't I know that Jesus? Why don't I know God like that? Because that was the difference. That was the difference in how they walk and how they operated and how they lived, was that they lived in a different level of faith and relationship with God than what I did. And I remember sitting there listening to these lessons, and not just lessons about Jesus. Like it was Dr. Nick Castellano talking about how quantum physics is now proving the Bible right through some of the different studies of like Feynman's electron test and Dr. Emoto and the water crystals and all these things, and about, talking about dark matter and going, the Bible talks about dark matter. The Bible talks about that God spoke from the unseen into the seen. He spoke things into creation. Well, those things, they could have either never existed or they could have been there out of sight, and God just spoke them into sight. And in Hebrews 11, it says that it is a now faith, now, right now, that brings from the unseen into the seen. The unseen world we're now discovering is dark matter, matter that exists, that can't be seen by the eye, but is real. Like, this stuff was blowing my freaking mind. It was like drinking out of a water hose and learning about the power, dominion, and authority that I have as as a son of God, because of the blood of Jesus on the cross and bringing me back into the true identity and who I was created to be. It was these things that I was like, nobody has ever talked to me about this type of stuff. And we go through this entire weekend just being like, dude, just like an onion, just layers just being peeled away, and going through this one exercise and all of this stuff, learning how to find the stories or the strongholds that attach to our central nervous system that keep us from the things that God has for us, because of these stories that are attached to us that make us run away from these things. All of this stuff was just being taught. And then we get to the very last evening, and Tommy walked us through this exercise of forgiveness. And in that moment, in that forgiveness, I forgave my best friend, Justin, who came to the very next Warrior 1-3 with me. But it was all of this stuff, dude, just, it wrecked my heart. Because it showed me that the pain and the struggle and this feeling of never being good enough, never being enough, never holding on to all of these things in my life that weren't things that I needed to be holding on to anymore. That I could let those go and give them to Jesus, and really learning that when it says that love holds no record of wrong, that means there isn't a secret filing cabinet somewhere that I'm keeping that stuff stored up in. That it means if you love them, then you forgive. And it's not, well, you can forgive but not forget. No, forgive and forget it, because it's done. There is no record. There is no, well, you can forgive but not forget. No, you forget it. There is no record anymore. And learning that I did that I, being the husband that I was being at that moment, was not me living up to the covenant that I made with my wife when we got married. Because in this, I think this is what shifted for my marriage, was when Tommy said, hey, married men, when you got up and you were standing on the altar with your wife, did you say, I try or I do? He said, we have a bunch of men and a bunch of people in this world that try. He goes, we don't try in this family. We do things. And I struggled with that. I was like, what do you mean? You're supposed to try. Like, give it a try. Like, I tried my best. And he gave me this example. And he gave everybody this example. So have this pen, right? And this dry erase marker. And if this was sitting down, and if I said, okay, John, try to take this dry erase marker from my right hand. Well, no, you did it. No, try to do it. No, you took it. You're doing it. Try to do it. He goes, trying does nothing. We do things. If we fail, we fail. Then we learn and we do it again. And then we do it again. And then we do it again because we never give up. And that was the shift. And I came home from that weekend that I realized that I had been trying in my marriage. And I came home from that weekend, man. And even when I got home, I flew home. The very first thing that I said to my wife after, and I didn't talk about the weekend as soon as I got home. I asked her, hey, how are you? What's going on? How are the kids? And for almost 2 hours, until she asked, I wasn't telling her about the weekend because it wasn't about me. So I was just, and then she finally was like, oh, how was the weekend? And I said, well, before we get into that, babe, there's something I've got to tell you. And I was like, and I need you to really listen to me. I need your forgiveness. And I need you to forgive me because for the last 10 years of our marriage, I've been trying. And that's not what you signed up for. And that's not what I agreed to. And I'm sorry, will you please forgive me? And I was just in tears. And she was like, of course I forgive you. And then it became walking that out, right? But it was just, I was in an environment, man, with a bunch of people who loved me and showed me, and some of the most successful people I've ever met, which I thought you couldn't be both. I thought it was either or. You're either a Christian or you're successful. And they blew that out of the water for me. And it did, man. Like it showed me a different aspect of how to live my faith instead of just say that I believe in my faith. And I think that's where I'm at now. Like in Hebrews, it says that we come to God in faith, knowing that he is real and that he will fulfill his promises. So I no longer believe, I know.
One of the, one of the most prominent characters, it's not even a character, is it? One of the most prominent people in the Bible is Paul the Apostle. And I know that that's what you've called your new company with Carlo. And you talked about the pain and the struggle. And something happens when you read different translations of the Bible. So there's a real common Bible, listeners of the podcast will know that I've raised this a few times because I think it really gets to the heart of why we do what we do. But there's that common scripture that says, the thorns in our flesh, in our weakness, we'll find strength, right? But in the Passion Translation, God's response isn't in your weakness, you'll find strength. In the Passion Translation, God responds, within your weakness, you will find my full expression.
Yes.
Yeah.
Our strength isn't about us. It's about being covered in the full expression of his love for us. And I'm learning that. I sent you the book, the Double Portion by Andy Glover, who's a Brit, by the way, who's a Brit. But yeah, man, I think what I've started seeing is this understanding that of my identity in God is the thing that shapes how I show up. And that because that's what's shaping how I show up differently. And because I show up differently, different outcomes are happening in my life.
Well, I've just opened a random page. Again, take that what we will, but it literally says we reproduce who we are, not only for our own children, but in the people we minister to or are connected with. We reproduce who we are not only in our own children, but in the people we minister to or are connected with. So I think, Jonathan Darling, I owe you a huge debt of gratitude, because for the person who I am and who I've become is in part because of who you are and who you've become. And you've had
So
a huge
heartprint.
exactly. You've had a huge ripple effect in terms of my family and the way that I lead my family, and that continues to expand and grow. So on record, my friend, in front of thousands of people, thank you.
Well, I will tell you this, and I know how much it means when I hear it, especially from Tommy. Dude, you are leading your family so incredibly well, and you are, God's very proud of you. Like dude, he's so proud of you. And I just think it's crazy. Like I can honestly say, like, you're the first person that I know that I still have a relationship with now that I remember when you asked me about my faith, and I feel like I did not explain it very well then, because I didn't understand it in the way that I understand it now. But you know, getting the chance to, like, when we were talking with Lisa, and she was on FaceTime, and I just said, like, who, like, you hear the words coming out of this man's mouth? Like, would you have ever imagined that?
Yeah.
It's you're running the race.
Well, this is, we could have a whole podcast conversation on weak men, why weak men. It's not just in the church. I think it's in society in general. We could get political as to say why that's happening, but I'm not really going to go there. But that's one of the things that, for me, I've had to learn to take up my cross, but within the way that I lead my family. And, I've been really deepening in my faith for myself, to get my own kind of heart and mind around it. And then this year, and particularly in the last 6 months, I think the last kind of 6-9 months, it's been a message on my heart to say, lead your family first. So, lead this way in your family, get those firm foundations. And I know that I can look at Lisa in the eye, I can look at anyone in the eye and say, like, now more than ever, like, I am putting my family first. And not that I wasn't beforehand, but it was like, not that I gotta get my words right. It wasn't that they were my burden, but it was like, I have work to do in the world. Do you know what I mean? And it was like, they were and they were the ones that were holding me back from making more of an impact. Do you know what I mean? I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but it's just inconvenience. Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean you're tired or unwell? Shouldn't you be looking after yourself so I don't have to take a day off work to stay home, right? This is my attitude. You're stopping me impacting people. Whereas now, man, it's just like family first, and from that all flows.
If anybody, even if you're not, if you want to, if there is a question as to the role of leadership and the man in the family and leading outside of the family before you lead in the family, let me give you a little piece of this. So this is in Exodus 4, verse 24. So Moses has talked to the burning bush and has been told he needs to go back to Egypt to set his people free, which we could have a whole conversation about Moses not wanting to step into who he was called to be and going, but look, God, I stutter, like giving all the excuses as to why he can't be great. And God just says to him, hey, Moses, what's in your hand? Right?
Yeah.
So just for people out there, never underestimate who you are and what you have to make an impact. You don't need anything else. Just what's in your hand. It's a whole nother thing. Exodus 4:24. Moses has gone. He's gone back to Jethro and said, hey, I need to go back to Egypt. I'm going to get my family. Are you cool if I take your daughter, my wife and all this stuff? He honored Jethro first and was like, hey, I need to go. Is it cool? Yep. Cool. at a lodging place on the way. So Moses and his family and Aaron are now on their way back to Egypt. At the lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. But Zipporah took a flint knife, cut off her son's foreskin, and touched Moses's feet with it. Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me, she said. So the Lord let him alone. At that time, she said, bridegroom of blood, referring to the circumcision. Now, there's all types of stuff of the blood of the firstborn and the angel of death and all of these things later to come. But why would God want to kill Moses when he had told him to go back to Egypt to set his people free? And then when they're camping along the way, the Lord met Moses at the camp and was about to kill him. Why? Because this is the kicker. According to Hebrew law, who Moses was a Hebrew going back to set the Israelites free, who were Hebrew, the Jews. The Jewish law was that the firstborn son was to be circumcised. That was a law of the Jewish people. Moses was Jewish. His son was not circumcised. So Moses was not living according to the law that had been established by God to his people. Moses was not leading his own home according to God, what God set up. And if Moses wasn't, God knew that I can't send Moses back to set my people free, because when they see that he's not following the law and leading his family according to me, then they won't trust him, because how can they trust him? He's not doing what it says that he's supposed to do. So God, he could have never set his people free and done what God needed him to do, because he wasn't leading his family first. That was my problem. I wanted to lead the world and I wasn't even leading my family. And you know what's crazy? The doors that have been open to me now because I am choosing to lead my family first, it's now in alignment. And so now God can really use me because I'm doing what he's told me to do, which is love him, lead my family, love people, and go tell people about me. There's a hierarchy to this stuff. And so, dude, to me, that is a Father's Day message that is ready to be preached right there of, look, men, if you can't lead in the corporate world and make an impact the way that I've called you to make an impact until you lead and make an impact the way that I've called you to in my family.
Yeah. And just so we're clear, no foreskins need to be sacrificed as a result of this podcast.
Yes. Yeah. No, don't go. Yeah. Don't go.
This is not medical advice.
Yes. But dude, I just think that I think it's interesting. Like you want to lead well, lead your family first.
I think the downfall, and people don't understand this, is that material success can be gained. And people think that it's outside of the home. And I've come to realize that in many, many cases, it is at the expense of the home. That in some way, the material world success actually leaves a giant hole in your own family home.
Well, because, dude, how often do you feel filled up with joy with your family? Because look, being a father, having a family, it is tough sometimes. Things are hard sometimes. Our wives aren't always pleasant. Our kids aren't always behaving. There is stress in the family. What I have learned, though, is typically what I'm getting from my wife or my kids is a result of what I am giving to them first. They're a reflection of me in the home. And I really think that it's easy for us to search for success outside and status and appreciation and value outside of the home, because our expectation is that when we walk in our home, we're to be the ones that are Oh, I used to come home from trips expecting, work trips, expecting my wife to be like, "Oh my gosh, you're home. The world is a better place now. You're like showering me with love, missing me so much." Well, no, I would come home and she would be frustrated because she had the kids all week and it was challenging and she was running around. She didn't have a lot of help and support. And I would be offended because I didn't walk in the door and she wasn't ready to just knock me over in expression of how much she loved me.
Mm.
And so like it becomes really easy to seek appreciation and admiration outside of our home because we expect that that's just what we should get. And honestly, man, like when I learned to stop putting expectations on my wife and just love her regardless of how she may treat me.
Yep.
I'd say I've got a fire marriage. Like we're living an epic love story. And it's, Daring was frustrated about something last night. And you know what? Like I felt myself wanting to get frustrated because she's frustrated and she was responding to me a certain way. Don't care. Love her anyway. How she treats me does not dictate how I love her.
Yeah. But what she's going to get is the gift of me clipping something earlier where you were like, Daring was right. Like she's going to have that for eternity now. Like back.
Oh, yeah.
You say there's no records of wrong. Well, there's a record now, my friend, of Daring was right.
A record of right.
So wait, we'll wrap up soon. I want to hear about Apostle. What's your heart and vision for Apostle?
Yeah. So, my business partner, Carlo Navarro, he and I met in college. He was several years older than me. We're in the same fraternity, and around 2015, 2016, we reconnected through writing and stuff like that. And he's been in the startup world for a long time. And we've been chasing these individual dreams. And it's always been about us and us making it and us getting to this point. And in November, he calls me and he's like, "Hey man, like I had this opportunity brought to me by some people that I was a part of a startup incubator with that developed this tech stack that does that helps with lead generation and automated messaging and all of this stuff." And he was like, they asked if I would be interested in white labeling it and targeting a different market that they think it could be very useful in. And they were like, "We think this could be really big in the industrial space." And he goes, and as soon as they said that, he was like, "The only person I thought that like at all I would want to do anything like this with would be you." And he was like, "What do you think?" And I was like, and at first I seriously was like, "Well, man, automated messaging through LinkedIn Messenger and email, like those things suck." Like, because I get them all the time and they suck. And I was like, "I don't know, man." Because I do that. I do business development as that's my role. It's what I've done for a long time. So, finding contacts, connecting with people on LinkedIn, finding projects, helping show, salespeople all. Now it's crazy because it's all over the globe because of the company I work for. But I'm helping teach salespeople all over the globe how to find prospects and do all this stuff. And so I spend a lot of time doing these activities that are now automated. And so there was a little bit of pride there because I'm like, dude, I do this really well. And it's authentic because it's me. I'll know about automation. Automation takes away from authenticity, blah, blah, blah. Well, then I started looking at the platform. I met the developers of the tech stack, who are some incredible people. And Carlo and I really started talking about, and I looked at the industry that I've worked in for the past almost 20 years and thought, they've figured out a way to automate me. And I think this could really be something. I think this could really help a lot of the people that over the last 15 years, I've built some incredible relationships with, that that oftentimes are asking me to help them find more customers and to connect with their customers and to do all these things. And I was like, I think this is a way for me to help the industry that I never knew that I was going to love or be a part of or build the relationships in that I did. And so honestly, Ryan, for the first time, I viewed something that I could chase and build that in reality wasn't about me at all. And I remember Darren going, well, this sounds like this is taking you away from your leadership stuff. And, you know, this is in a different direction than what you've said you've wanted. And I said, I know, which is what I think is the greatest part about it. Because it's not about me anymore. Because now it's Carlo and I. And there, and so as we've, as you know, the group that started the tech stack, they've been running their version of the company for their vertical for 3 years now and have had incredible success. And so we've started, you know, we've white labeled it and we're pushing it out to our market. And literally what we do is we work with organizations, work with companies in the packaging and industrial automation space, and we help them build their ideal customer profiles, right? Just like a dating site. We take them through this process to really know who they serve at a high level and who they work the best with. And then we take all those dynamics, we build a huge list using all the different list building stuff that everybody uses, Zoom info and all this stuff. We bring all of that stuff together and we build a list of their ideal customer profiles. And then we spend a lot of time helping them craft their messaging so that as we use automation to increase the outreach to all of these potential customers, the messaging from that person, because we use their LinkedIn profiles, their emails, it is, what would you say to someone at an organization that you connected with that you know fits your ideal customer profile, that you believe with what you do really well, you can serve and help them do what they do better. And so we craft our messaging that way, and the different messages in the sequence. And you know, we just signed our first customer, which is the largest customer we could have. It was like going out fishing for bluegill and we caught a swordfish. Like, it's a game. There's no reason why this company should use us outside of they are using us because they're in the industry that I'm in and they believe in what we're doing, and we truly believe we can serve them at a really high level. And man, I've been loving what I get to do with Apostle, because we get to help people share the good news. And what's really funny about it is it was a name that we immediately knew we wanted. Like as soon as we were like, name, Carlo was like, dude, Apostle. I'm like, yes, that's it. And, you know, we pray before our business meetings. We pray for our customers before their meetings. Like, we operate differently, and we tell them like, look, we want to help you serve. And if we're not helping you serve, then we end our contract after the pilot and we're done. We move on, because if we can't serve you, then we don't want you to waste your money on us. Right. And so we're very transparent about that stuff. But going back to the card earlier and some of that stuff and throwing away short-term goals, Carlo and I originally, when we started this in January and started this conversation, it was, well, it's just going to be the two of us. Well, because of the customer that we signed, they have 300 plus packaging and janitorial supply distributors that are members that pay to be members of this group, that they're going to launch us to in June as the select service provider for lead generation and business development to all 300 plus distributors. And so Carlo and I were laughing. We were like, we need more people because we can't not service all of these people. And so we were like, and we had never intended that. And we were like, well, how many people do we need? And immediately he and I both almost in unison were like 12. We need the 12 apostles.
Send them out.
And so it's just been really cool, man. And it's a really cool platform. I think there's so many different areas we can go into it. But what I love about it most is that everything that I've been doing for the last 15 years has set me up in a place to where God has given us this. And I finally, for one of the first times ever, I get to use everything that I've been given to serve other people in an industry that I love. Let's freaking go. And so July 14th, I'm going to be July 14th. I'm turning in my notice and I'll be apostle full time. And we're going to make an incredible impact on our industry.
Yeah, man. Here for it. Cheering you on, my friend. And, yeah, if you're not connected with Jonathan on LinkedIn yet, go and do that. Link in the show notes. And Jonathan, I'd just love to know whether you can bottle your heartprint into a sentence, a paragraph. Like you're having incredible impact on the world. You know what the word heartprint means. You know what it embodies. What do you think your heartprint will be come the end of your days?
When I think about if I think about how I want people to remember me the most, is I want them to remember how much I loved them. Like that, I think that's what I'm here for. I think I'm here to love people differently than they've ever been loved before. And I can look back on my life as stories as kids and all these things that's been a common theme, that I've loved a lot of people that were seemingly unlovable. And I just want people to know how dearly they were loved and that I believed in them. And I think if especially my wife and kids, if that's what they remember, that gosh, Dad loved me and he spent time with me and he believed in me and he lifted me up and he held me accountable to being the best version of myself that I could be. And two, man, that I've helped, because of that love, lead other people to Jesus, then I feel like I've lived the life that I was put on this earth to live, which is to love God, love people, and to tell them about him.
I love you, brother. I love you.
I love you, man.
And all the good links to Jonathan's socials and all his good work is in the show notes. Jonathan, this is like the longest episode we have ever done.
Ever.
It's just the longest I've ever done. And yet we probably barely even scratched the surface of what was possible. There's probably so much more that we could do. We could do 2 Rogans. But for now, my friend, you just have to come back another time. Be honored if you'd leave us a final thought from your good self.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is by Mother Teresa. And it says, she says that I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone that creates many ripples. Every person that she also says, never let anybody leave you being worse than what you found them. Always leave people better. And I think those 2 quotes by Mother Teresa go hand in hand. And so my final thought for the listeners would be, never underestimate the impact that you have in someone's life even in that brief moment of interaction that you have that might seem fleeting. Because when you show up in love, you're going to leave a mark and you're going to create a ripple. And you could forever change someone's life because of how you loved them in that moment. So be love.
Micro moments, massive impact, true to form.
That's it.
Love you, brother. Appreciate you.
Love you.
Thank you for making it to the end of the interview here on YouTube. I hope that our time spent together has left you a little bit better than before you push play. Before you go anywhere, please leave a comment down below, some of your key reflections, your key takeaways. I love hearing from you and what this conversation has inspired in you. Let me know what you're going to do as a result of this conversation. I will be back next Wednesday where I will share another inspiring guest. To make sure that you don't miss that, please do subscribe, hit the bell, and you will be notified as soon as it goes live. If you're curious to know how I, through Always Better Than Yesterday, can serve you, your team, your organization, please do visit alwaysbetterthanyesterday.com, and it will be my honor and privilege to help you in any way I can. Keep leading, my friends. I've been Ryan Hartley, host of the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast here on YouTube. Always love.